Hello friends, I am back again with my next video on the topic communication. This is my second video on communication barriers. In it, I will cover organizational barriers and personal barriers. Barriers, as you know, these are the hurdles, obstacles, bottlenecks, or you can say obstructions in the path of communication. Barriers restrict the free flow of communication and creates gap in the understanding of the message. Now, these are the different categories of barriers to communication. We have already discussed semantic barriers and psychological barriers in the previous video. In this video, I'll be covering organizational barriers and personal barriers. So let's start with organizational barriers first. These barriers, they arise due to organization structure, authority relationships, rules and regulations of the organizations. The factors which are related to the organization structure, authority responsibility, rules and regulations, they may sometimes act as barriers to effective communication. Okay, message may not reach the receiver in the same shape as it was sent by the sender. Now let us discuss various barriers under this category, that is organizational barriers. First is organization policy, then rules and regulations, status, complexity in organization structure, and one more, that is organizational facilities. So the first one under organizational barriers is organizational policy. Organizational policies, they determine the effectiveness of communication. If the policy is not supportive to the free flow of communication, then it may hamper the process of communication. Now an organization can be centralized or decentralized. It is the policy decision of an organization. Top management decides whether organization will be centralized or decentralized. In a centralized organization, all the decisions are taken by the top management, so there's no free flow of communication. Fine. However, if the lower levels of organization, they are also involved in decision making process, it means company is following policy of decentralization, which results in smooth and free flow of communication. Fine. If every communication is taking place through scalar chain or facial lines, communication will get slower, hence it might lose its effectiveness. So the process of communication is largely dependent upon the policy of organization, whether it is centralized or decentralized. Now the second organizational barrier is rules and regulations. Rigid rules and cumbersome procedures adversely affect the process of communication. Similarly, if the communication has to pass through prescribed channels, it may result in delays. For example, we can see red tape is a bureaucracy in government departments involving lot many procedures and paperwork which delays the communication process. Similarly, some organization may have such rules like that every communication shall take place in written form only. Subordinates will communicate official information only through their official mail ID. Sometimes such type of rules are made by the organization. Of course, such type of rules are made by the organization to fix the responsibility of the employees for any wrong action. However, in emergency, such type of rules may result in procedural delays and communication might lose its effectiveness. Okay. Next barrier is status. Status relationships. They may also create psychological distance between the superior and his subordinates. A status conscious manager may not allow his subordinates to express their feelings freely. Sometimes superior might think that the subordinates, they are not capable enough, or they don't have that same set of mind. He do not communicate with them thinking that they are his juniors, and why should he take suggestions from them? They don't have that much mental level as he is having. His ego restricts him to communicate with his subordinates. Similarly, Subordinates, they may also hesitate to clarify their doubts due to attitude and status consciousness of their boss. So it creates a gap in communication. Organizational barriers, similarly, a status conscious manager may not allow his subordinates to get his positive response. Similarly, a centralized organization restricts the flow of communication, while a decentralized organization results in smooth flow of communication. Next organizational barrier is complexity in organization structure. The effectiveness of communication again largely depends on the nature of structure, nature of organization structure. If the structure involves a large number of managerial levels, then communication has to pass through all those managerial levels. Then it will get delayed and distorted due to large number of filtering points. Message passes from one layer to another. It loses its original form. So, a complex structure of organization may hinder the communication process. Next is organizational facilities. If facilities for smooth, clear and timely communication are not provided, communication may be hampered, may be obstructed. Facilities like frequent meetings, conferences, suggestion boxes, complaint box, social and cultural gathering, etc. will encourage free and timely flow of communication. Lack of these facilities may create communication problems. Fine. If company is rarely organizing a social or cultural gathering, employees they just come, finish their work and leave the organization, then communication, smooth flow of communication is not taking place in the organization. There is no suggestion box, there is no complaint box. Employees they do not get a chance to redress their grievances, to share their grievances or problems with their superiors. Then it means communication, two-way communication is not taking place. It may also result in a hurdle, as a barrier in the communication process. You can see a complex organization structure may create problem in the smooth flow of communication because message has to pass through different layers. It might get filtered. Similarly, in case there is no grievance handling system, there is no complaint box, then employees may not be able to present their problems or share their suggestions or grievances with their superiors. So such type of facilities, complaint box, grievance handling system, they facilitate two-way communication. Next category is personal barriers. The personal barriers, they are basically related with the personal factors of both the sender and receiver. They have direct influence on effective communication. Personal barriers can be further classified into fear of challenge of authority, lack of incentives, unwillingness to communicate, and less faith on subordinates. Fine, let us discuss these barriers. First is lack of confidence of superior on his subordinates. Communication process is definitely hampered when superiors do not have faith on the ability or competence of their subordinates. If the superior is not having faith on the ability of subordinate, he will avoid taking any suggestion or getting any opinion on a particular matter. In such a case, superior may not seek, he may not get any advice or opinion of the subordinates because they think subordinates, they are not intelligent enough, they are not experienced enough, they do not have that much exposure, so they don't prefer to take any suggestion or they don't involve them in decision making. If superior do not have faith on the subordinates. Next is fear of challenge to authority. Fear of challenge to authority. A superior always tries to maintain a higher position and prestige in the organization. Okay, if he fears that a particular communication may have an adverse effect on his authority, then he may withhold or suppress such communication. Whenever he feels that his image may get down in front of others, he may tend to withhold that information. For example, a manager who has less idea about IT sector, he is not very comfortable in technology field, then he or she may avoid the meeting involving upgradation skills in the IT sector because he feels in the meeting he might get exposed in front of others. Okay, every superior wants to maintain his status, his position in the organization. Anything which is going to have a negative effect on his position or status, he may try to avoid that situation. He may try to withhold such communication. This will obstruct the smooth flow of communication. Fine. When there is a fear of challenge to authority, then the superior or boss may avoid that situation. In order to avoid that situation, he will withhold the information. Okay. Similarly, if the superior do not have faith on the ability of his subordinates, he will not share any information with the subordinates. So these are the barriers which are basically related with the set of mind of the personal issues of the superior. Now, the next barrier is unwillingness to communicate. This barrier, it arises on the part of subordinates. The earlier two barriers that we discussed in personal barriers, one was fear of challenge to authority. This barrier is on the part of superior. One we did lack of confidence of superior on his subordinate. Again, that was on the part of superior. Here we are discussing from the point of view of subordinates. Sometimes subordinates, they are not willing to communicate with their superiors. They don't want to share their information with their superiors because they believe that if information is incorrect, if it is not correct, it might adversely affect them with it. Okay? Because of that only, that his information might not be correct. Fine. People might make fun of him. He is not sharing that piece of information with his superiors. He will avoid sharing that information. One more barrier in this category is lack of proper incentives. If there is no motivation or incentive for communication, subordinates may not take initiative to communicate. For example, if there is no reward or appreciation for a good suggestion, then subordinate may not be willing to offer useful suggestions. Fine. This is basically give and take situation whereby both parties get benefited. If a subordinate is giving suggestions, both parties should get benefited. Organization get a positive suggestion, and we should honor, we should reward the employees for their good suggestions. In case they are not getting any reward or appreciation from the superior, they will avoid giving suggestions. These barriers arise due to the personal issues of both the sender and receiver. That's all for the personal barriers. Hope you have understood both the organizational barriers and personal barriers. Fine. The rewards are necessary to motivate the employees so that they come forward for their suggestions. Thank you. Hope you have understood the video. Thank you, beta.